She was dragged from the stable minutes after giving birth, but one cowboy rescued her just to give her. She lived on the ranch long before most people noticed her. Every morning before the sun rose fully, she was already awake. The air was cold, the ground hard, but she never complained. Her life followed the same routine every day. Cleaning the stables, feeding the animals, carrying water, fixing small things that broke. It was tiring work, but it kept her busy, and being busy helped her forget the weight she carried inside her heart. The ranch was large and far from the nearest town. It belonged to a powerful family who owned land, animals, and influence. Many workers came and went, but she stayed. Not because life there was kind, but because she had nowhere else to go. The ranch gave her food, a small room, and work. That was enough to survive, even if it was never enough to feel safe or happy. She did not talk much. When others laughed or joked during breaks, she stayed quiet and focused on her tasks. Some people thought she was proud. Others thought she was strange. In truth, she was simply careful. And she had learned from a young age that words could be dangerous. Silence for her was protection. Her room was small and old, with a single bed and a narrow window. At night she often lay awake listening to the sounds of animals and the wind moving through the trees. Those sounds felt more honest than human voices. Animals never judged her. They never asked questions. They accepted her as she was. Among all the workers on the ranch, there was one cowboy who noticed her more than the others. He was not loud or rough like many of the men. He worked hard, spoke little, and treated everyone with basic respect. He saw how she moved carefully, how she avoided attention, how her eyes often carried a sadness that did not match her young age. He never pushed her to talk. Sometimes, when their work crossed paths, he would simply nod or offer help without asking too much. She appreciated that more than she could say. In a place where people often took what they wanted, his quiet respect felt rare. Her past was something no one knew fully. She had come to the ranch years ago, tired and broken, with nothing but a small bag of clothes. The owners did not ask many questions. They needed workers, and she needed shelter. That was the unspoken agreement. Over time, she learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to do her job well enough to avoid trouble. But there was something she was hiding, something growing inside her that she tried desperately to keep secret. She wore loose clothes and avoided being seen too closely. Each day, fear followed her like a shadow. She knew the truth could destroy what little stability she had. On this ranch, kindness was not guaranteed, and mistakes were often punished. Despite everything, she still found moments of peace in the stable. The smell of hay, the sound of animals breathing, the soft warmth around her, it made her feel less alone. When life felt too heavy, she would spend extra time there, brushing the horses or sitting quietly near them. They never asked her to explain herself. As the days passed, her body grew weaker and her steps slower. She blamed it on work, on exhaustion, on the heat. No one questioned her. People rarely noticed what they did not want to see. The cowboy, however, sensed something was wrong. He saw how she sometimes held her side, how her face tightened in pain before she forced herself to keep going. Still, he said nothing. On the ranch, speaking up could cost a person their job, or worse. He told himself it was not his place. Yet deep down he felt uneasy, like a storm was quietly building. The ranch itself had its own dark rhythm. Power ruled everything. Those at the top lived comfortably, while workers survived day by day. Rules were spoken and unspoken, and breaking them came with consequences. She understood this better than most. That was why she stayed quiet, worked harder than necessary, and avoided attention at all costs. One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, she stayed behind in the stable longer than usual. Her breathing was heavy, and sweat covered her face despite the cool air. Pain came in waves, stronger than anything she had felt before. She gripped the wooden post and tried to stay silent. She could not let anyone hear her. Fear filled her mind. She knew this moment was coming, but she had hoped she could delay it somehow. She had planned to face it alone, just like everything else in her life. The stable, once her safe place, now became the only place she could hide. Outside, the ranch continued as normal. Workers finished their tasks. Laughter echoed faintly in the distance. No one realized that her life was about to change forever in that quiet, dim space among the animals. The cowboy passed near the stable on his way to finish work. He noticed the light still on and found it strange. Usually she left earlier. He paused, listening. At first he heard nothing unusual, just the animals shifting and the soft sounds of the night. He hesitated. Walking away would be easier, safer. But something held him back, a feeling he could not explain. He stood there for a moment longer, then slowly moved closer. unaware that this small decision would soon pull him into a story far bigger than he ever expected. Inside the stable, she fought to stay calm. Her thoughts raced between fear and hope, pain and determination. She told herself she had survived worse. She told herself she could survive this too. All she wanted was a moment of peace, a chance to breathe, a chance to hold on to whatever strength she had left. She did not know that her quiet life on the ranch, built on silence, endurance, and survival, was about to be shattered. The night that began like any other was slowly turning into the beginning of something painful, dangerous, and unforgettable. And somewhere nearby, a cowboy who had always chosen to mind his own business was standing at the edge of a choice, one that would change both of their lives forever. The pain grew stronger as the night moved forward. Inside the stable, the world felt very small. The sounds of the ranch faded into the background, and all she could hear was her own breathing and the quiet movement of the animals around her. Each breath felt heavy, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would only make things worse. She held onto the wooden rail beside her, closing her eyes whenever the pain came in waves. Time felt strange, stretching and shrinking at the same time. Minutes felt like hours, and hours felt like moments. She had imagined this moment many times, always hoping it would be quick, quiet, and unseen. She had prepared herself to face it alone, just as she had faced everything else in her life. The stable was dimly lit by a single hanging bulb. Shadows moved across the walls as the animals shifted. The smell of hay filled the air, familiar and comforting in a strange way. This place had always been her escape. Tonight it became the place where everything changed. When the moment finally came, it took every bit of strength she had left. Her body trembled, and tears ran down her face, but she did not cry out. She bit down on her lip, refusing to make a sound. She was afraid that if anyone heard her, things would turn bad very quickly. After what felt like forever, it was over. Exhausted and shaking, she slowly lowered herself onto the hay-covered ground. Her whole body ached, but her heart was full of emotions she could not explain. Relief mixed with fear. Joy mixed with worry. She reached out, barely able to move, and held what she had just brought into the world. For a brief moment, the world felt quiet and still. In that silence, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Even though she was tired and scared, that small moment gave her strength. She whispered soft words, promising protection, promising love, even though she had no idea how she would keep those promises. But peace did not last long. Footsteps suddenly echoed outside the stable. Her heart dropped. Fear rushed through her like cold water. She tried to move, to hide, but her body was too weak. The door opened roughly, and harsh voices filled the space. The calm of the stable shattered instantly. They had found her. She tried to explain, to beg for understanding, but her words came out weak and broken. No one listened. There was no patience, no kindness. They did not care about her pain or what she had just been through. To them, she had broken rules, crossed a line she was never meant to cross. Rough hands grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet. The sudden movement made her dizzy. She struggled to stay standing, her legs shaking beneath her. The ground felt unsteady and the room spun around her. She looked back toward the hay, panic filling her eyes. She wanted to go back, to stay, to protect what she had just held in her arms. But she was dragged away before she could do anything. Her voice cracked as she called out, but the sound was swallowed by the night. The stable door slammed shut behind her. Outside, the air was cold against her skin. The stars above looked distant and uncaring. Every step hurt, but she was forced forward anyway. Tears streamed down her face, not just from pain, but from the fear that something precious had been taken from her forever. She felt small, powerless, alone. As they pulled her across the yard, the ranch looked different than it ever had before. The familiar buildings felt cold and threatening. The place that had once given her shelter now felt like a trap she could not escape. Inside her mind, thoughts raced. She wondered if she would ever be allowed back. She wondered what would happen next. Most of all, she wondered if she would ever be reunited with what she had left behind in the stable. She felt herself growing weaker with every step. Her vision blurred and her breathing became shallow. At some point, she stopped resisting, not because she agreed, but because her body could not fight anymore. Nearby, the cowboy had finally decided to follow his instincts. From a distance, he had seen movement near the stable that did not feel right. He had heard raised voices, sharp and angry. That was enough to make his stomach twist. He stayed in the shadows, careful not to draw attention. As he watched, he saw her being dragged away. The sight shocked him. She looked pale, barely able to walk. Something was clearly very wrong. He wanted to step in immediately, but fear held him back. On this ranch, standing up to authority came with serious risks. He had seen what happened to people who asked too many questions. Still, something inside him refused to stay silent. He waited, watching until they took her out of sight. Then he turned back toward the stable. His heart was pounding as he moved quickly but quietly. The night felt heavier now, filled with tension and unanswered questions. When he reached the stable, he hesitated at the door. The light was still on. The animals were restless, shifting and making soft noises. He stepped inside slowly, unsure of what he would find. What he saw made him stop cold. There, in the hay, was clear evidence that something serious had happened. The space felt wrong, like a moment had been stolen from it. His chest tightened as he realized the truth of the situation. This was not just about rules being broken. This was about something far deeper and far more human. He looked around, making sure no one else was nearby. His thoughts raced as he tried to understand what to do next. Walking away would be easy, or forgetting would be easier still. But once you see something like this, you cannot unsee it. Outside, the night remained quiet, unaware of the storm building beneath its calm surface. She had been taken away, weak and frightened, believing she had lost everything. He stood alone in the stable, realizing that his life, too, had just crossed a line. Both of them were now moving toward a future neither of them had planned, one shaped by fear, courage, and a choice that could not be undone. The cowboy stood still in the stable for a long moment. His heart was beating fast and his thoughts were heavy. The quiet place that once felt peaceful now felt tense and wrong. He knew something serious had happened here, something that could not be ignored. The signs were clear enough for him to understand even without words. He slowly walked closer, careful not to make noise. The animals seemed uneasy, as if they also sensed the trouble in the air. He looked around once more to be sure no one was watching him. On this ranch, curiosity could bring danger. But what he had seen outside, the way she was dragged away, would not leave his mind. He took a deep breath and made a decision. He knew he could not pretend nothing happened. He also knew that helping her could cost him his job, his safety, and maybe his future. Still, something stronger than fear pushed him forward. It was the simple belief that what happened was wrong and that someone had to do something about it. He quietly left the stable and moved through the shadows of the ranch. He avoided open areas and stayed close to fences and trees. Years of working there had taught him how to move without being noticed. Every step felt heavy, but his purpose was clear. Meanwhile, she was taken to a small room far from the stables. It was cold, empty, and unfamiliar. She was placed on a hard bed and left alone. The door closed and the sound echoed in the room. Silence followed, thick and painful. Her body ached and her mind felt numb. She stared at the ceiling, trying to understand what had just happened. Fear wrapped around her heart. She did not know what would come next, and that uncertainty was worse than the pain. She thought about the stable. She thought about what she had left behind. Tears filled her eyes again, but she had no strength left to cry. All she could do was lie still and hope that somehow things would not end this way. Back outside, the cowboy reached the edge of the ranch where workers usually gathered supplies. He knew some people there. People who talked too much, but also people who sometimes listened. He had to be careful about what he said and to whom. He found an older ranch hand he trusted, someone who had been there for many years and had seen a lot. The cowboy did not explain everything. He only said enough to raise concern. He spoke quietly, choosing his words carefully, watching the man's face for any sign of danger. The older man listened, his expression growing serious. He did not ask many questions. Instead, he gave the cowboy a long look and nodded slowly. He warned him to be careful, reminding him that power on the ranch was not something to challenge lightly. But he also did not stop him. That was enough encouragement. The cowboy knew where she had been taken. It was a place used to isolate workers who caused problems. He waited until the ranch grew quieter, until most people were asleep. The moon hung low in the sky, giving just enough light to see by. As he approached the building, his nerves tightened. Every sound made him pause. He knew that if he was caught, there would be no easy way out. Still, he moved forward, driven by the image of her weak and frightened face. When he reached the door, he listened. Everything was quiet inside. He knocked softly, once, then again. There was no answer. He whispered her name, barely louder than the wind. From inside, she heard a sound and froze. Fear rushed through her again. She thought someone had come back, and her heart pounded painfully. But then she heard her name spoken gently, without anger or force. She pushed herself up slowly, her body protesting every movement. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Trust was dangerous, but something about the voice felt different. Familiar, safe, die. She opened the door just enough to look out. When she saw him standing there, surprise filled her eyes. She had never expected help, especially not from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Words felt too small for what the moment carried. He spoke first, softly, telling her she was not alone. He told her he had seen what happened. He told her he could not walk away. He did not promise miracles. He did not make big claims. He simply said he wanted to help. Relief and fear mixed together, making her dizzy. She wanted to believe him, but years of pain had taught her to be careful. Still, she could see honesty in his eyes. He asked if she could walk. She nodded slowly, even though she was not sure. He offered his arm, steady and strong, without pushing or pulling. She accepted it, leaning on him lightly. They moved quietly through the dark, avoiding open paths. Every step felt like a risk. Her breathing was shallow, and her strength was fading, but she forced herself to keep going. She knew this might be her only chance. As they walked, he stayed alert, listening for voices or footsteps. His mind raced with plans and worries. He did not know exactly where they would go yet, but he knew they could not stay. They reached a small storage shed near the edge of the land, a place rarely used at night. He guided her inside and closed the door gently. It was not much, but it was safe for the moment. She sat down slowly, exhaustion taking over. Her head dropped forward, and she covered her face with her hands. The weight of everything she had been holding inside finally broke free. Silent tears fell, one after another. He gave her space, standing nearby but not too close. He knew that sometimes the best comfort was quiet presence. After a while he spoke again, telling her she could rest, that he would keep watch. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but grateful. In that moment she realized that he had not rescued her for praise or attention. He had done it because he believed she deserved better. The night stretched on, slow and tense. Outside the ranch slept, unaware that something important had shifted. Inside the small shed, 2 lives crossed in a way neither had planned. By morning, everything would be different. Choices would have consequences. Danger would not disappear. But for the first time since that night began, she felt something new. Hope. And the cowboy, sitting quietly nearby, understood that his decision had changed more than just one moment. It had set both of them on a path that could never be undone. Morning came slowly, as if the night itself was tired of holding so much fear. Pale light slipped through the small cracks in the shed walls. Birds began to sing outside, unaware of what had happened only hours before. Inside the shed, she stirred slightly, her body still weak, her mind heavy with thoughts she did not know how to quiet. She had slept only a little. Each time she closed her eyes, memories returned. Rough voices, the cold night air, the feeling of being pulled away when she could barely stand. But this morning felt different. The silence around her was gentle, not threatening. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel watched. The cowboy was still there. He had not slept at all. He sat near the door, listening carefully to every sound outside. When he noticed she was awake, he stood slowly, careful not to scare her. He asked softly how she felt. His voice was calm, steady, and free of pressure. She tried to answer but found it difficult to find the right words. Instead, she nodded slightly. Her throat felt tight, and her head hurt. He understood without needing an explanation. He offered her some water and a small piece of bread he had brought earlier. She hesitated at first, then accepted. Her hands shook as she ate, but the simple act of being cared for brought tears to her eyes again. He told her she did not need to rush. There was no hurry, no orders, no shouting. Just time. Those words alone felt like a gift. On the ranch, time was never hers. Every minute was measured by work and rules. Here, for a short while, she could simply exist. As the morning grew brighter, he explained what he planned to do next. He spoke carefully, making sure she understood that nothing would be forced. He wanted to help her recover and figure out a safe way forward. He knew staying on the ranch would be dangerous for her now. Too many people knew something had happened, even if they did not know the full truth. She listened quietly, holding the cup of water with both hands. Fear still lived inside her, but it no longer ruled her completely. She asked him why he was helping her. It was the first real question she had asked anyone in a long time. He did not answer right away. He looked down at the ground, thinking. Then he said something simple. He said he had seen too many people get hurt because others chose silence. He said he could not carry that weight anymore. Helping her was his way of choosing differently. His honesty surprised her. He was not trying to sound brave or important. He was just telling the truth as he felt it. That made it easier for her to trust him. Later that day, he left briefly to gather more supplies. He moved carefully, avoiding attention, choosing paths where he was less likely to be seen. Each moment away from her felt risky. but he knew she needed more than what the shed could offer. While he was gone, she sat quietly, listening to the sounds outside. Her thoughts drifted back to the stable, to the life she had lived there. It felt like another lifetime now. She wondered if she would ever feel safe again, if she would ever belong anywhere. When the cowboy returned, he brought clean cloth, warm food, and news. He had spoken to someone he trusted outside the ranch, someone who might be able to help them find a place to stay temporarily. It was not a perfect plan, but it was a start. He helped her clean and rest as much as possible, always turning away when she needed privacy, always asking before doing anything. Those small acts of respect mattered more than grand promises. Slowly, her body began to regain a little strength, and her mind felt less foggy. As the hours passed, they talked more. Not about the painful details, but about small things. She told him about her childhood, about places she had lived, about dreams she once had before life became only about survival. He listened without interrupting, without judgment. He shared parts of his own life, too. How he had come to the ranch looking for steady work, how he had learned to keep his head down to survive, how helping her had reminded him that survival without purpose felt empty. That evening, as the sun lowered again, they prepared to move. Staying another night near the ranch felt too risky. With careful steps, they left the shed and headed toward a quieter road that led away from the land. Every step was difficult for her, but she kept going. He stayed beside her, ready to support her if she stumbled. The world beyond the ranch felt wide and uncertain, but also full of possibility. They reached a small, simple place owned by someone kind enough not to ask many questions. It was safe, quiet, and far enough from the ranch to give them breathing space. When she finally sat down inside, the tension she had been holding for so long began to release. That night, she slept deeply, for the first time in what felt like years. In the days that followed, healing became the focus. Not just healing of the body, but of the heart and mind. The cowboy checked on her often, but never crowded her. He encouraged her to speak when she felt ready, and to rest when she did not. She began to realize that healing was not fast or simple. Some mornings she woke up feeling strong. Other days fear returned without warning, but now she did not face it alone. Kindness surrounded her in small, steady ways. Warm meals, quiet conversations, moments of laughter that surprised her when they came. Slowly, the heavy silence she had lived in for so long began to lift. One afternoon, she stepped outside and let the sun warm her face. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time, the future did not feel like a threat. It felt unknown, yes, but also open. She knew challenges still waited ahead. The past could not be erased. But something important had changed. Someone had seen her suffering and chosen to help, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And in that choice, she found the strength to believe that her life could be more than pain, that maybe, just maybe, the worst chapter was behind her, and a new one was slowly beginning. Time moved forward in a quiet, steady way. Days turned into weeks, and each new morning felt a little lighter than the one before. The place where she stayed was simple, but it was safe. That safety made all the difference. She no longer woke up with fear rushing through her body. Instead, she woke up slowly, listening to birds, feeling the warmth of the sun through the window. Her strength returned bit by bit. At first, even small movements made her tired, but with rest, care, and patience, her body began to heal. The cowboy made sure she never felt rushed. He reminded her often that healing was not a race. Some days were good, some days were hard. Both were allowed. They created a routine that felt calm and normal. In the mornings, she helped with small tasks when she felt able. Folding cloth, watering plants, preparing simple meals. These small actions gave her a sense of control over her life again. For so long, everything had been decided for her. Now, even choosing when to rest felt powerful. The cowboy found work nearby to support them both. It was honest work, nothing fancy, but it gave him purpose. Every evening, he returned with quiet updates about the day. Sometimes he spoke about the people he met. Other times he stayed silent, and that was fine too. They learned to be comfortable with quiet together. As weeks passed, she began to smile more. Not forced smiles, but real ones that reached her eyes. Laughter came unexpectedly, surprising her both times it happened. It felt strange at first, like something she had forgotten how to do. But slowly it became easier. One afternoon she sat outside watching the sky change colors. She thought about everything she had survived. The ranch felt like a distant memory now, heavy but far away. She knew it would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her entire life. She finally spoke about her fears for the future. She wondered if she would always feel like she was running, like danger was waiting just around the corner. The cowboy listened carefully. He told her fear might never disappear completely, but it did not have to control her. He said strength was not about never being afraid. It was about moving forward, even when fear was present. Those words stayed with her. Over time, she began to dream again. Small dreams at first. A peaceful home. Work where she was treated with respect. A life where her past did not decide her worth. Each dream felt fragile but real. The cowboy kept his promise. The one he never spoke out loud but carried in his actions. He gave her something she had never truly had before. Choice. He never told her what to do or where to go. He stood beside her and let her decide. Eventually, she chose to move forward on her own terms. Not alone, but strong enough to stand. With help from kind people they met along the way, she found steady work and a place that felt like home. It was modest, but it was hers. On the day she moved in, she stood in the doorway for a long moment. The air felt calm. The walls felt welcoming. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, knowing this was the start of something new. The cowboy stayed close, not as a rescuer anymore, but as someone who believed in her strength. Their bond had grown from kindness, respect, and shared silence. It did not need labels. It simply existed, strong and steady. Months later, she looked back at her life with a different heart. Pain had shaped her, but it had not broken her. Someone had seen her at her weakest moment and chosen to help, not to take control, but to give her freedom. That was the greatest gift of all. She walked forward into her future with quiet confidence, carrying hope where fear once lived. And though the past would always be part of her story, it was no longer the ending.